This is Melanie Wilkinson with YorkNewsTimes.com. We had the opportunity to sit down with Superintendent Mike Lucas from the York School District to talk about the school aid formula. Right now, there's just a model out there. It hasn't been completely approved. But Lucas says that he does have concerns about how this could impact financing for York students.
Worried about the current state aid model that's coming out of Lincoln. It's important to understand that it's not certified until June 1st, so this is not a done deal, but we're just going off what the most recent model was that came out this past Monday, April 29th. And in dealing with state aid, there's basically, the formula is very complex, but what people need to understand is there's a formula that takes into account a school district's needs, and needs are determined by the population, how many kids they have, the demographics of those students. Are they living in poverty? Are they English language learners? And all kinds of factors go into the needs side of the state aid formula. Then there's the resources side of the state aid formula, which is primarily about a school district's ability to get money through local property taxes. Okay, so this formula spits out every school district in Nebraska's formula needs and then resources, and then the difference becomes state aid. That's a real Cliff Notes version of it. What's happening in 13-14 with the proposed state aid model is we're going through a huge shift in our state, and the money as presented is going to the larger school districts at a very disproportionate rate. Okay, couple of numbers for state aid. This is a big number. Over $906 million are in the state aid formula for 2013-14 for public school districts. Parochial schools don't get state aid. That's over a 6% increase in money. So there's a big pie of $906 million that's going to be divided up to all these schools. And right now, the bigger schools are getting the lion's share of that. For example, there's a $54 million increase in state aid. Okay, well, the bigger schools in our state are getting $57 million more. So they're getting even more than the increase itself. A couple of numbers here. Omaha Public Schools, great school district. They educate 52,000 students. There's 301,000 students in Nebraska. OPS has over 17% of them, 52,000. But they are receiving over 20% of 13-14 state aid. They're going to receive over $184 million. You look at Millard, another metro school, great school district. They educate 24,000 students, right at about 8% of the Nebraska public school students, but they're receiving 9% of the 2014 state aid. You look at York, little old York. We educate 0.43 of 1% of the students in Nebraska, the public school students in Nebraska. 1,300 kids out of 301,000, 0.43 of 1%. But we're only set to receive 0.15 of 1% in state aid. So we're getting a third of our students while the bigger districts are getting more. What you'll hear a lot of people say, a lot of leaders around the state, they'll say that places like York don't need as much state aid because they have a strong tax base, they have farm ground. And the metro schools and the larger schools aren't as lucky to have the farm ground that we have here in York County. And that's not accurate. It is not a dollar for dollar exchange. That's the message we've been trying to get out to state senators and to other leaders around the state, that if you lose $100 in state aid, it is not made up for with the $100 of additional property tax revenue. Here are some numbers from our audited books that prove that. In 2009 and 10, and our fiscal year runs September 1 through August 31. So in 2009-10 fiscal year, York received a reduction in state aid of $990,000. Huge reduction. We were fortunate. We had a 5.1% valuation increase. Okay, so our local property taxes brought in $572,000 more dollars. But when you take the $990,000 cut, you add in the $572,000 more property taxes, we still had a negative loss of over $418,000. In 2010-11, we had a positive year. Okay, we received 53,000 more in state aid than the prior year. We received 53,000 more in property taxes than the prior year. It's a good year. But that $107,000 of additional revenue that we got, it didn't even allow us to grow our budget 1%. It was less than 1%. So that doesn't even allow you to stay up with your fixed costs and utilities, diesel, and those types of things. In 11-12, now we're back on a huge cut from state aid. Now we get another cut of over $870,000. Another 5.1% valuation increase. So lose $871 in state aid, gain $476 in property taxes. Still an overall loss of almost $400,000. And that's the message that we're trying to get out to folks around the state, that our property taxes do not sustain the school district without ample state aid. And the fact that state aid is going to the larger schools is a concern, because there are many schools like York, Lexington, Norris, South Sioux City that are just getting walloped, and it's very scary as we move forward.
Now, you said that this isn't a done thing, this is still just the model. But do you feel like school districts like York and the ones that you mentioned are they being heard by lawmakers? Do you think that there is a chance that this model won't fly, and do you think there ever will be a substantial change in how this is handled?
To be honest with you, I don't. I think it's a done deal, and we're fortunate here in York. We have Senator Adams. Greg Adams is a phenomenal person, Speaker of the House now, and he is a great senator and a great leader, not only for York but for the entire state. And this is in no way a reflection on the great job that he does and continues to do. But there's a lot of big things at play. There are a lot of big schools that quite simply have a lot more power than the mid-sized schools like York. You know, you look at OPS and LPS. Those two districts combined, they educate about 30% of the public school students in our state. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first to admit, we need OPS and LPS to be strong. That's good for our state. But they carry a lot more weight than we do. And then you add in the metro schools, Millard and Papillion and Elkhorn and the others, and I don't feel like York's voice is being heard. And we're trying to band together with some of the mid-sized schools, the Class B schools, but quite simply, we don't carry the population or the power that the metro schools and the larger Class A schools do, and it's very frustrating, because we've cut our spending in York substantially, over $1 million. Our cost per pupil spending is below the state average. So that's how school districts model efficiency. The average spending per public school student in our state is $10,709. We spend $10,405 per student. So that's a way to define efficiency. We're not trying to buy fancy things. We're trying to provide the best opportunities we can for our kids, and it's just frustrating that we've cut our spending. We've had a 5% student population increase. A lot of people don't realize that, and our demographics are changing quite a bit, and we don't have the support that we need financially from the state.
Do you want to just say then, too, in closing, if this does hold true and this is the trend that continues, what do you foresee for the future for the York School District?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too, that I've tried to be careful about with this interview and with some press releases that we've done. We're not panicking. I don't want anybody to think, oh, my goodness, York Public Schools is going to be an afterthought 5 years from now. That's not the case. But moving forward, it hamstrings you on what your programming and your staffing plan can look like. And we feel like the students that we have are just as important as every other student in the state. You know, York County is just as important as Douglas County or Lancaster County or anywhere else in the state of Nebraska. We're not asking for any special favors. We're not asking for extra money. We're just asking for our share. And I'm not sure how this new formula has worked out, but in looking at the numbers, it is heavily swayed towards the large schools, and we have a lot of important people working at non-Class A schools in our state that deserve their ample revenue as well. So we'll continue to work on it as a leadership team here in York. We continue to provide a lot of technology. You know, our student achievement scores are higher than they've ever been. We have more academic programming than we've ever had. This year's class of 2013 is going to graduate with over 1,000 dual credit hours of college credit. So things are going well, and they're going to continue to go well. But it's going to affect our textbook adoptions. It's going to affect our bus fleet. It's going to affect all the things that we need to do to stay as viable as possible. Another item we've looked at closely with this new model that has come out is the approximate 2014 state aid per student. And a couple of numbers here as we've compared York Public Schools to some larger Class A schools. Omaha Public Schools is going to receive over $3,550 of state aid per student in 2013-14. Lincoln over $2,560. Millard over $3,370. Papillion La Vista over $3,130. Elkhorn almost $3,200 per student. Okay, state aid. York $1,080 per student of state aid in 2013-14. So we are not even half of per student of what these larger schools are get, and in some cases we're not even getting a third per student that some of the larger schools are getting per student. And again, that's not to throw stones at those larger districts because they have a lot of great programs, but York students are just as important as anybody's else, and I can't, it's hard for me to go to our students, to go to our staff, to go to our patrons and explain how that works. If our property tax revenue overcompensated for the loss in state aid, I could explain that, you know, but it doesn't, so it's a bitter pill to swallow.
Again, Superintendent Lucas says that he'll continue to try to get his word out. He just wants the York District to get a fair shake like all other districts in the state. Again, this is Melanie Wilkinson with YorkNewsTimes.com.